Are you looking to create an engaged community? Or have you ever wanted to actually multiply your time by automating yourself? In this episode of the podcast, we're going to talk to a guest that will help you do just that. Hello and welcome. My name is Nick Palkowski, and this is The Power of Podcasting, the show where we help you grow your business by adding value to your audience. And I'm very excited for this episode of the podcast because we have a special guest. We are going to be talking to none other than Mitch Matthews. Now, Mitch is a keynote speaker, a success coach, and a best-selling author. Mitch has worked with teams and leaders from organizations like NASA, Disney, Booking.com, plus he travels around the country to speak to college campuses. And as you're going to see in this interview, he is very passionate and energetic, especially when he's helping entrepreneurs and leaders dream bigger, think better, and do more. Mitch has created a great business for himself, helping others achieve their dream. And I love this episode. It was a great episode where we talked about a wide variety of things, from how to actually create content for your podcast, or more importantly, I thought, how to actually automate yourself, because Mitch has realized his dream is to help over 1 million people achieve their dreams. Now, talk about an amazing dream. But in order to do that, he's had to put a few things in place. He now goes out and actually trains other coaches to help coach people to achieve their dreams. But he also has created a great online coaching program that we're going to talk about on this episode of the podcast. And we're also going to dive into his podcast that recently launched, the Dream, Think, Do podcast, where again, he's helping people turn their big ideas into reality. I know you're going to love this episode, so here we go with our interview with Mitch. So on this episode of the podcast, we have a very special guest, and I'm really excited to talk to him because, one, I just love his energy and his kind of playful professionalism, I guess. That's a good way to put it. But most of all, I love his message. He has a message of helping you turn your big ideas into reality. So I'm very excited to be talking today to Mitch Matthews. Mitch, thanks so much for being here.
Nick, it's a total honor, buddy. I love it. And I love your work. So it's just great to get to have an excuse to hang out and talk good stuff.
Well, that's awesome. Well, Mitch, there's a couple of reasons I actually wanted you here on this episode. And one, just kind of right up front, is that you are a podcasting client. So I kind of helped you launch your Dream, Think, Do podcast, which is doing outstanding. I love it. So we're definitely going to be talking a little bit of podcasting here on this episode. But also, I just love kind of your overall business, where you're really going out there and helping people dream bigger. You know, you're helping them actually go and achieve their goals, achieve their wild, big dreams. And I just love the way you add value with your business to help others grow and improve their life. So we're definitely going to be talking a lot about that as well.
I love it, man. I love it. Thank you. That means a lot.
Awesome. Well, and just to kind of start us out, Mitch, why don't you give us an overall idea of what your core business looks like? Because you have a little bit of irons all over the place. You know, you're doing a little bit of everything. But what's
that's
actually
why I
your
became an
core business?
entrepreneur, because I have a short attention span, and it just seems like this really goes along well with that. So our business is really kind of a three-prong attack. So I love our core message is to help people dream bigger, think better, and do more. And the way that manifests itself into a business, though, is really three parts of our business. And one part is speaking, where I go out and either do keynotes or training or seminars. The second part is one-on-one coaching. So working with people, executives, leaders, entrepreneurs, one-on-one to help them kind of figure out what those dreams and goals are, and then put a real plan in place to make them happen, make them a reality. And then the third part of our business is online training. One of the things that a great friend and now business partner on that part of our business said to me once, he said, I keep hearing you talk about having this dream of launching 1 million dreams in your lifetime. He's like, but you can't do that by yourself. It's like, you've got to be able to automate yourself, but you've also got to create an army of people that are helping you to do that. And so our first foray into online training was to create some training around coaching so we could, train other coaches. And I was doing a lot of that training in live events. But we did that and turned that into some online training. And we've literally been able to help thousands of coaches around the world with that training. And then that's expanded to include other things, business training, a lot of in-depth coaching training, a lot of training for speakers, that kind of stuff. So that kind of thing is great because it allows you to reach more people, but it also allows you to sell stuff while you sleep. You don't have to travel to do it and all those kinds of things. So it's been a real blessing, and it also helps me with my short attention span.
Nice. I love it. I'm kind of the same way. I got so many projects going on right now, but it just keeps you on your toes, which is a good thing.
Yep, absolutely. That's exactly right.
Well, actually, let's stay right there just for a second, because I'm sure many of the people listening to this podcast actually have that same problem where their attention span's a little bit all over. They're good starters, but not necessarily good finishers.
Yep,
so
exactly.
how do you manage all of those different prongs, all those different avenues, all those different things that you have out there?
It's a great question. A number of different things, but a couple of things that are, I think, kind of immediately applicable for people is one of the things I had to do was blocking with my time. One of the things when I first got started, I wanted to coach and wanted to speak. I didn't have any of the online training yet. But with that, then I would take on a new coaching client and just kind of find a time in the week to coach them. And then I get a new speaking gig and I, try to schedule that in. And then I'd go and meet with somebody and all that stuff. And my schedule was all over the place so that I could never really control what I was doing. So, in the morning I was coaching someone, in the afternoon I was doing something else entirely. The next day I was doing all those kinds of things. And my, even though I have a short attention span, I have to figure out ways to protect my focus so that I can do that. So one of the things that I've done in the last few years that's made a huge difference is blocking. So for an example, for our business, I do all of my coaching on Mondays and Tuesdays. I don't do any other coaching any other part of the week, so that I know, I can offer that to my coaching clients. I give them a protected time, but I know that Mondays and Tuesdays are for coaching and then content around coaching. Wednesdays generally tend to be my online business, my online training business. So I have a business partner and friend that I work with a lot on that kind of content. And we've worked our schedules so we can do most of the work that we do on Wednesdays. And then Thursdays, Fridays, and the weekends tend to be more for speaking. Now, my speaking sometimes will fall on those other days, but it's relatively rare. And I can usually, move those events around. They usually, give me some options, those kinds of things. So what I've found is it helps other people that I work with, because I've got a number of people now that I work with, and a lot of my team is virtual. So it really kind of allows them to know when I'm really going to be focused on that part of the business, so they can kind of ramp up for that time as well. And I've found that, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, a big part of that is not only, managing your time, but also optimizing it so that the people that are supporting you can also do the same.
Yeah, that's so huge. So how did you actually get involved with the online part? How did that kind of come about? Was it just your time was strapped and you're looking to multiply it, or what did that process really look like? Because I think that's where a lot of people are looking to kind of go.
Absolutely. For me, it was kind of divine providence and perfect timing. So what happened for me was that a person that went through one of our live trainings, one of our it's called the Coach Mindset, and it's an elite life coach training and certification. They attended that and were blown away by it, started to use it and paid for the training within 1-2 clients. And then they were off to the races and were growing just an incredible business. And at the same time, they were studying a lot of Jeff Walker's stuff, product launch formula, those kinds of things. And they came to me and said, I don't really have my own product that I want to create. But, he said, I think I could really master all these other things. And I had even mentioned that those were the things, at least at that time, that I did not want to try to master, like video. I didn't want to master, interactive learning platforms. I didn't want to master any of those things. But then he threw down and he was really good. He knew exactly which buttons to push for me. He said, he was the one, his name is David Nadler. He was the one who said, dude, if you're serious about helping launch 1 million dreams in your lifetime, you can't do that one live event at a time. Yeah. You've got to make it so that more people can reach you. So for me, I can say that I'm wildly blessed that I was able to connect with somebody who had complementary skills and a complementary dream to mine. It's a little bit, my prayer at the time was I felt a little bit like Walt Disney, and which is kind of a bold thing to say, but I felt like the creative, the person that didn't mind being on the stage, that kind of thing. And I needed my Roy. And I don't know if a lot of people know that story, but we wouldn't know anything about Walt Disney if he didn't have an older brother named Roy, who was an amazing accountant, an incredible negotiator, a details guy to beat the band. And he also had no interest of ever being on the stage anywhere. And that's why we know about Walt Disney. Yeah. So my prayer at that time had always been, man, let me find my Roy. And so David is a great friend and is also a business partner. And it really helped me to stay in my zone. And I've learned a lot of the things that it takes to do that, but I've also learned that it's best for me to stay in my sweet spot and just create content and surround myself with great people like David, like you. I mean, that's one of the other reasons why I needed you to help me in the podcast world. Was I've realized that if it was up to me, I'd create those interviews and they would just sit somewhere on my computer or those kinds of things. I just needed somebody to help me pull it through. And I would imagine you've got some creatives listening to this and they could probably understand and identify with that. Like, oh, I love to do this part of it, but then it just sits on a shelf or in a binder or in a folder and never sees the light of day. So to me, the trump card is surrounding yourself with the right people, figuring out a way to work together that it's mutually beneficial, and then making it happen.
Yeah, and let's dive into that a little bit more. How do you actually go about finding some of those right people? You know, how do you know who is the right person?
That's a great point. So one of the things is I always am, with my business, I think with anybody's business, whether you're a speaker and a coach, or whether you're a dentist or a plumber and you're just wanting to grow your business, whatever it is, there's seasons to your business, and different seasons call for different things. So I know that when I was starting to get ready for the podcast, I knew that I was really thinking a lot about my platform, which again, to someone outside that can probably think, oh, that sounds egotistical or whatever, but it's a Michael Hyatt concept and he borrowed it from a lot of other people as well. But it's that whole thing of being able to say, what's your platform? And, a plumber, a dentist, a veterinarian can all use the same concept. But this season, as I was getting ready as an example to get to work with you, I really had started to think, I love podcasting because I love interviewing people. Mm-hmm. I also saw this wave that podcasting represents. And then I also thought, these are my skill sets, but then I also thought I've got a number of great interviews. Like I'd already done a number of great interviews for different projects. And I thought almost all of them are languishing, sitting in SoundCloud or sitting on my desk somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I haven't used them. Right. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I always look at competency, but I also look at, and this is where it's science and art. When I surround myself with somebody, I want to make sure they're really good at what they do, but I also measure how I feel when I interact with them. So I've had some people that were wildly competent, but they felt like, they were assy, you know what I mean? Or they were jerks. Yes. Or, they obviously were very good at what they did, but I felt schmarmy or slimed after spending time with them. So it sounds, it might sound, again, touchy-feely or whatnot, but this is science and art, especially if you're creating content. Because it's one of those things that if you're creating content and you're surrounding yourself with competent people who make you feel like pond scum, you're not going to want to work with them and you're not going to create great content. So you got to make sure that you're feeling good and that they're also competent at what they do. So, for me, in an example with you, I had a great interview with Hal Elrod. And, he posted, actually you posted that, and I listened to the interview and I'm like, who is this Nick guy? And so I started to dig in, and it's one of those things where I don't want to just go off of first impressions, but I also, say, all right, I started to swim around the web a little bit to say, okay, what have you done? What are you doing? So I saw you were competent, but then also I started to reach out to you to say, okay, and you started to interact. And you were great on that front, and I enjoyed it. And we had an initial phone call to talk about and explore things. And afterwards, I'm like, I like that guy. I don't just respect what he's doing. I like that guy. Like I feel good getting off the phone with that guy. And so that for me was a huge thing to be able to say, I want competency, but I also want relationship. So that's a little bit of how I do that, especially with something like that. If it's a short-term thing, I worry a lot less about relationship and that kind of thing. But if it's a long-term thing like this, man, I hope you're younger than I am, but I'm hoping we both grow old getting to do stuff like this and variations of stuff like this for a very long time. So I wanted to make sure it was both sides of that equation.
No, I think that's awesome. And I think that's such a good approach to it because, yeah, just like you said, one, you're just at your best when you like the people you're working with. When you're enjoying it, like that's when you can add the most value. That's when you can create the best quality content that there is.
Exactly. Well, and it's one of those too, where a lot of people, whether you're doing this full time or you're doing this on the side, most people that are doing this are working towards creating a business of their own. And, what's funny is I do a lot of coaching with people who are starting businesses. And it's very funny because a lot of people that are in corporate America, as an example, don't really like what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They've just settled into something that's not a great fit or whatever, and they want to get out of it. But a lot of times because of habit, they get out of it and they start to create something that mirrors what they're trying to get out of. Yeah. And so I always want to say, be conscious of that. Like, be conscious of the kind of organization you're creating, the kind of culture you're creating. And one of the best ways you can do that is be very intentional about the number of people and the type of people you're adding to that culture. And people forget that. It's like, oh, right, this is my choice. That's not somebody being forced on me. This is my choice now. So I always like to remind people of that it's now you get to do it. And, but you have to be really intentional about it.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to people's default, it's their comfort zone. They're so used to that, the way everything has been, that even when they do get out, they finally take a little bit of step, get out of their comfort zone a little. They just want to fall back into something that seems familiar. So they just need to push through that a little bit and, deal with the uncomfortableness of it.
That's exactly right. And it's that whole thing too, of almost giving yourself permission to believe that great people are out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of times you're in an environment, especially if you're in a corporate environment, you're surrounded, hopefully you're surrounded by great people, but you're also surrounded by a lot of dorks, and people that aren't a great fit, and also people that are not happy with what they do. And it's easy to start just thinking that the whole world looks like this. Yeah. But when you're creating your own organization, it's important to keep yourself, give yourself that permission to say, I really am going to look for great people. And then it's all about then finding a great way to work together. Make sure it's a win-win so that, that people want to stick around and they're happy as they work together.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I want to kind of transition now into talking actually about the podcast. So because you've had some great results with this podcast, it's been awesome to kind of see all the people flock to it, because it is such a good message. It's really empowering people to go out there and to find their dream job, to live their dream life, to really create big things. So how did the idea of the podcast kind of come about for you?
Well, it's funny. It was, of course, a series of events in some ways that seem random that all come together. But a couple of years ago, a local radio station asked or approached me to say, we're wanting to create some local programming. They had a lot of their stuff was national people. And they approached me and said, hey, we want to create some local folks as well. And so I started to do a real short show for them on Friday mornings each week. And I found myself really enjoying that. And, it was a little bit of the Dream Think Do. It was like kind of first version of Dream Think Do. It was shortened. It was for radio, all these kinds of things. And I learned a couple things. One, I really learned that I enjoyed creating content like that. Two, I realized I was okay with interacting with a microphone. I mean, that's something that's, you have to kind of test out to be able to say, okay, am I going to be okay if it's just me in a room with a microphone? Am I going to be okay with that? Or to be able to interview somebody? Do I enjoy that? And I started to realize, I like that. But one of the shortcomings was I realized that the audience, although it was a great radio station with a great audience in my local area, I realized I was putting in all this effort, and it was bumping up against the boundaries of my city. You know what I mean? And it's one of those where when I took a step back, I realized to grow the kind of business I needed to grow and wanted to grow and felt called to grow, that wasn't going to be enough. I needed to be able to have a farther reach, and that just wasn't going to be able to happen with this local show. So I quit that because time didn't allow for it anymore, that kind of thing. But that planted that seed that this is something I want to do. but it's got to have a further reach than just a local kind of opportunity. And so I thought, podcasting could be that thing. And then I also knew from coaching and things like that I loved interviewing people and all of that. So I kind of always thought this podcasting thing could really be it. My challenge, though, was I'd do an interview and I'd put it out on SoundCloud. As you well know, I had some incredible interviews with really big people. And I think grand total, if you added up all of the listens I had before Nick, before you, it's PN, pre-Nick. I think I had a grand total of maybe 600 downloads. And these were really good interviews I was proud of with great people. It's like, what the heck? And so I realized there were just things I was blinded to that I didn't know what I needed to know. And I thought I could spend a ton of time figuring out what those things are, and then probably spending another year not wanting to do them. Or I could find somebody who was awesome like you that said, that you would know my blind spots, but also would be there to kind of take up and do those things that I didn't want to do. So I could really focus in on what I did best and what I enjoyed the most. So the seed got planted a couple of years ago. And then in some ways I kind of got to then hop on this wave of podcasting. But a big part of that was, finding the right people to partner with to make it possible.
Yeah. And I got to hand it to you too. You do a phenomenal job of really creating great content and very engaging interviews. I know some of the team that I work with, actually, they love listening and working with your podcast just because it is very engaging, both the interviews, but then also your solo content is actually, I think we get more downloads on some of your solo content than we do on a lot of the interviews.
We do. That's kind of fun. And I'll tell you what, that actually was a lesson from the radio station too, because when I first got into the radio station, I think they were taking this huge risk. Here's a weirdo speaker guy, right? Had never been on the radio really, other than some interviews. And they were giving me a show. Like, what the heck? And so I went in there, and the first time I did it, I think I was almost like a robot because it was me and a microphone in a room. It's like, what the heck? And the station manager came in afterwards and was like, I think he was trying to find the nice thing to say. It's like, well, that was energetic. I'm like, okay, I think that's positive, right? He said, but here's the thing. I want you to just imagine that microphone is someone that love, and want to help. And he's like, just talk to that microphone because it's somebody on the other side. Don't think that you're talking to thousands of people. Look at that microphone and talk to them like you're talking to a person, and a person that you know and love and want to help. And that was huge for me because that's, and especially those deep dives where it's just me, not interviewing anybody, but just talking. Like, I love those because I feel like I can speak right to, it's just a one-on-one conversation. And that actually helped me a ton, as opposed to thinking this is a conversation with 1,000 people or 10,000 people. It's like, no, this is my conversation with Mary as she drives to work this morning, or with, Chet when he's working out. Like, it's you and me, and we're laughing and we're having fun and that kind of stuff. So, that helped to demystify this a little bit and make it more real.
Oh, I think that's excellent advice because, that's exactly what you need to do. And like I said, everyone loves how engaging those are. But I want to actually ask you, because one of the questions I get all the time is, how do I know what to talk about? How do I create that content? So how do you come up with your ideas for some of those deep dive episodes?
That's a great question. So some of, I get to cheat a little bit because I've been a speaker for 10 years. Yeah. So some of my content is, taken from workshops, keynotes, and those kinds of things. So I get to cheat a little bit, at least especially on the first couple of episodes. But now what I'm doing is really trying to engage people to say, all right, now that you've listened to it for a while, what questions do you have? So example, I'm not sure when this one will go live, but when this conversation will go live, but one of our most recent podcasts was a direct result of an email that we got. One of my earlier episodes, I talked about being an introvert who's learned to be extroverted. And people have a hard time believing that, because I think most people see an introvert, or they hear about an introvert and they think of a shy, quiet, not confident person. It's not that. It's just that I always ask, if you want to figure out whether you're introverted or extroverted, how do you recharge? Do you recharge with a group of people, or do you recharge by a book and a nice glass of wine and know people? It's like, that's probably going to be your best gauge. So anyway, a person wrote in after hearing that I was an introvert who learned to be extroverted, or, have extroverted strategies. he said, hey, how did you do that? Talk to us more about that. And it's funny because I put that out then on social media. I put it out on Facebook a little bit, that kind of thing. Would you guys be interested in this? And got a huge response. Yeah. So, those initial ones really came that, the content really came from some of the workshops and work that I'd done in the past. But now I'm really letting that dialogue, that communication back and forth drive these future shows. And I'm finding myself getting even more excited about it because it's making it real. It's making it relevant. But I'm also, it's allowing me to stretch a little bit, talking about some of the things that, I do talk about sometimes, but sometimes, it's allowing me to go into some new areas, that kind of thing. But it's really allowing that kind of dream, think, do family to guide the process as well. So I'm finding that that's helping, but it's also a lot more fun.
Well, yeah, and that's awesome. And that's one thing too that I think you do a great job of is actually helping create that family feel almost. Because like you said, you're reaching out, seeing if this is, hey, is this something you want us to cover more? Is this something you're interested in? And just getting that engagement is crucial in actually growing your audience and really growing your business. Yeah.
It's also a little scary though, just to be honest. Like just to admit, I think some people might like that idea, but just so you might put an idea out there. And I know for me, I'll think about putting an idea out there and I'll almost hold back because it's like, what if people don't like it? Or what if people, don't want it and all that kind of stuff. And I've just realized, you just kind of have to know that some are going to be huge and some aren't. I have a buddy that's a pastor at a church and I take a little lesson from him that he said it's kind of funny. He's like, I'll do a sermon and I'll think it was the best daggone sermon ever. And I'll get no feedback on it. Or, it'll just be like, and he said, then I'll go out and throw a complete clunker, right? Yeah. And somebody will come up and go, oh my gosh, that thing you said, it changed my life. And he's like, I have to keep myself from going, really? I'm like, what? And I have to keep that in mind when I'm creating content that sometimes it's going to be the whole episode that's going to be a game changer for somebody. And sometimes it might be a sentence that either I or somebody I'm interviewing throws out that's almost an accident or it just came to you or whatever. And that one sentence is going to be the thing that really impacts somebody. And so to just kind of hold loosely to that, to try to do your best, but also know, there's just a lot of stuff that's outside our control and just bring your best game and see where it falls.
Well, yeah, that's a great point. And that's also just goes to the fact what's really important is just to show up, just to be there on a regular basis, to consistently try and add that value, do the best you can, but just make sure you're showing up week after week after week.
And that's something I've really learned from you because that's something where I was really screwing up in the past. I was kind of a bulimic podcaster in that I would binge and purge. I would get a bunch of spare time. And so I'd do 4 episodes or 4 interviews. And then I'd pull them out on SoundCloud all in the same day going, look at all that content, blah, blah. And again, cricket. Whereas, you were like, hey, we got to put this out in a way where people, they can expect things. So we've done some bonus shows at different times, but my show, for the most part, my episodes come out on Thursdays, right? And I'm finding people, local people, regional people on Facebook and social media now are letting me know they're looking forward to it. They've gotten into that zone. And I think that consistency is so right. It's an important component that was one of those things that was in the blind spot for me. I didn't really know that. I learned that from you.
Well, thanks. So what are some other, you're saying you're starting to get people to reach out to kind of say they're looking forward to it. What are some other things you've seen as a result of, building that consistency and just the podcast in general?
Absolutely. So, I've been seeing ripple effects. So we've only been doing this couple of months now, right? I mean, 3 months, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Right?
Yes.
Just under 3 months. So it's incredible. And I've always tried to have realistic expectations. I had 600 downloads, I think total on SoundCloud, right? Before you, pre-Nick. And so I was kind of thinking if we in that first month could have 3,000 downloads, that'd be exponential growth. That'd be the shiznits, man. That would be awesome, right? And then that first month, I think we hit 30,000 downloads or something like that in the first month. I'm like, that's real good. That's crazy good. Right. But it was funny because I didn't really see immediate impact. So I love seeing those downloads, but I had to be honest, I didn't see an immediate return. And, it wasn't like I was expecting to get a phone call from Oprah in my first 2 weeks, but maybe my third week or fourth week, right? That kind of thing. But with staying with it now, it's been really cool. Like in the last few weeks, I've started to really see the fruits of doing this and putting it out there and being consistent. So I had somebody in Europe reach out to me. I have coaching clients all over the United States, but I had somebody in Europe listen to one of the podcasts, then wound up kind of getting hooked. They binged on Dream, Think, Do podcasts. At the end of that day, reached out and said, I need your help. I'm a coach too. Let's talk. And boom, my newest coaching client is in Spain from a person who had no idea who I was, just a couple of days before we started to work together. I had somebody that was a referral from somebody else. And what was great was that, yes, I still would have gotten that referral if I hadn't had the podcast. But one of the things that happened was when I had an initial consultation with this group, they're a group out in San Francisco, a branding firm out in San Francisco, great guys. And this referral that connected us, they've got huge credibility with this group. So I would have already had some credibility. Mm-hmm. But when we had this conversation, this initial conversation, the guy's like, he said, I'm just got to be real open and transparent with you. I said, okay, go for it. He said, I've been listening to your podcast. I'm like, dude, thanks. He goes, yeah. He said, so the experience I'm having right now with talking with you on the phone is, he said, I almost feel like I'm talking to a celebrity. And I'm like, get out, right? Like, what? And he goes, no, seriously. He's like, I know you're a real guy and all that stuff. He said, but I just wanted you to know that's the experience I'm having right now is I'm talking to a celebrity. I'm like, that's freaking crazy. And by the way, no paparazzi, right? No photograph, right? But it's just kind of that thing. So I've had a number of clients here recently that have reached out and then hired me because of the podcast, because it was one of those things where I think, they could kind of kick the tires a little bit to see what kind of content, what kind of, what do I put out there as far as the kind of information that I put out there, what's my delivery like, all that kind of stuff. But I think they could also see the heart of your business. And that's one of the other things I think with consistency is that if you're going to sell a crap sandwich, you can make it look good for a little while. It's kind of like anybody can pull off an interview, but you can't deliver. Like, people are going to figure out it's a crap sandwich over time. Yes. Now, I'd like to think we don't have a crap sandwich. I think we got some pretty good stuff and that kind of stuff. But it's one of those that's what one of the other things that consistency provides is it allows somebody to go, this person's not 1 inch deep. This person's got, chops, or this person's got maybe depth, or this person's got areas of expertise that I need more of, and that kind of thing. So, so that's been some of the ripple effect. But I think probably the most satisfying part of it is just to get the emails from people saying, wow, that episode was exactly what I needed that day. Like, and it's kind of one of those where it's like, I didn't have any control over that. They didn't listen to the most recent one. They listened to one, from 2 months ago, but just to get that email from that person, just saying, hey, I just want to let you know, that had an impact. So it's that kind of thing that it's obviously the business. There's an actual return on investment from an, monetary standpoint, but I think for me, it's just as satisfying to hear the people that have been impacted by it. Just because it was the message they needed right in that moment.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And I just love one other thing that I like just about podcasting in general is just the way it has kind of that sticking power. Like you said, people can go back and listen to them from months and months ago and still be impacted in a real true way, which is really cool.
Well, and I think that's also a pre-Nick issue that I had. That was something that was totally in my blind spot was before when I was doing anything or just putting it out on SoundCloud, I promote it once or twice. But one of the things I've learned from you is there's a lot of good in just on a Wednesday saying, hey, did you listen to this episode? And it might've been from 2 months ago. And because of the way Twitter works and because of the way Facebook works, you could have thought everybody on the planet, your mom, everybody saw that you'd put out that new episode. But because of when you put it out there, that's when people see it, and that's when they go listen to it. So, that whole thing of podcasting it is timeless in that, putting that content out there. It's one of those people can revisit that, go dig into your stuff, find out more about you, that kind of thing. So it makes a huge difference.
Absolutely does. So if you were going to give some advice to someone who's looking, maybe they just started their business or they haven't started yet, what would your advice be for that person who really wants to get going and create a business, let's say, similar to yours?
Sure. So one of the biggest things would be to figure out who is your avatar, who is your ideal client, and also at the same time figure out who isn't.
Yeah.
And I actually think that that's probably as important, if not more important. So, I actually, with my business, I work with fun, successful people. I don't work with grumpy people. I just tick them off. I annoy them, all of that stuff. But when I first started out, and this rule kind of applies to blogging. It definitely applies to podcasting. It applies to everything. But I used to, write blog posts as an example. And in my mind, I have a grumpy uncle, right? And,
Okay.
and this grumpy uncle would always be sitting on his shoulder going, "That's not funny. People will think you're not professional. Don't put that in there. That's not right." And I would always kind of placate to my grumpy uncle, right? And I would put out stuff that was milquetoast and vanilla because I didn't want to offend anybody. And I didn't want to, I wanted to be funny, but I didn't want to be too funny or whatever, all that stuff. And when I realized, so as an example, my first website was at kickinthepants.com. So for my personal coaching site, I had a kickinthepants.com.
Nice.
And my grumpy uncle in my head was like, people aren't going to think you're professional. That's just not right. But I started to realize it attracted, and I don't mean in some metaphysical way, it just fun, successful people would go, "A kick in the pants. That's exactly what I need." As opposed to grumpy people, it was my avatar repellent, or excuse me, my avatar attractor and my anti-avatar repellent. So like grumpy people would bump up against the kick in the pants and go, "I don't like this guy. Who does he think he is to have a kick in the pants? I'd give him a kick in the pants," right? And those people would never reach out to me. And what I've realized is that you need to know who you're talking to and just boldly talk to them. And don't worry about anybody else. Because if anything, if you're growing a business where you want people to reach out to you as a result of listening to your podcast, be bold about who that person is, and also try to tick off people that are a bad fit for you. It will save you time, right? With my coaching business, my complimentary sessions, I close probably about 85 to 90% of those complimentary sessions. And that's, I think, a direct result of doing stuff like this, because people aren't that surprised when they talk with me. I've got kind of annoying levels of energy. And if they don't want that, they're going to bump up against my podcast. They're going to bump up against my website, all that stuff, and be like, "I cannot stand that guy." Right. And so those guys never make it to my complimentary session.
Oh, that's awesome.
But the people who listen to my podcast and go, "You know what? I like him. He's weird, but I like him. I want to hang out with him more." That's going to be the person who's going to make it through my funnel, and then, tend to want to spend and invest in spending time with me. So that used to be really scary, the thought of ticking people off and sending people away. But I realized for the longevity of my business, but also from the standpoint of creating content, it's been really freeing and energizing to grab a hold of that and run with it.
Oh, Mitch, that's so awesome. And I just want to thank you so much for this interview. This has been a great episode. If our listeners want to get in touch with you, maybe learn a little bit more about your coaching program or your coaching for coaches, which or your online course, where's the best way for them to actually get in touch with you?
Probably the best place to start would be mitchmatthews.com. And it's Matthews with 2 T's, but mitchmatthews.com. And that will allow you to find out more about our podcast, the Dream Think Do podcast, and check into our blog, but also find out about the different training options and speaking and that kind of thing that we do. And my hope is that you'd also reach out, because any friend of Nick's is a friend of mine. So you find us there.
Awesome. Well, Mitch, again, thank you so much. Really love this episode, and have a great day.
You too. Thanks, brother.
All right, so what did you think of that interview with Mitch? It was a great one, wasn't it? I've actually gone back through and re-listened to it a couple times now, just because I loved the content that he shared so much. And that's what I'm really trying to do here with my business, is actually find ways to multiply the impact and really almost automate myself. So if you want a checklist of the strategies that Mitch mentioned on how to multiply and automate your business and your impact, simply text the word Power of Podcasting, that's one word, Power of Podcasting, to 33444, or you can head on over to yourpodcastguru.com/downloads, and you'll get that checklist there. And I just want to thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you want to get all the resources and show notes for this episode or links to any of the other episodes, simply go to powerofpodcasting.tv powerofpodcasting.tv. That's powerofpodcasting.tv. And there you can actually find out how to get one of these cool t-shirts for free. So head on over to check that out. And before we wrap up this episode, I just wanted to announce a very special contest that we're going to be having here, a special giveaway that we're going to be having. I've been so blown away by the feedback from this podcast so far. I've just been extremely grateful and happy with all of those of you who have reached out to me already, letting me know the value that you're getting from it. But I want to help make sure that as many people as possible find out how a podcast can actually impact and grow their business. And I need your help for that. So that's why I'm going to run a very special giveaway contest for those of you who go and leave a review. So all you have to do to enter this contest is actually go leave a review for the Power of Podcasting, either the audio or the video, before July 17th. And if you leave that review before then, you're going to be entered into a drawing where 5 lucky people, 5 lucky reviewers, are going to receive a free access to the Podcasting for Profits course. So they're going to get free access to that course that I created that walks people through my entire process for podcasting and how it can actually apply to their business. So go leave a review to be entered in that random drawing. On top of that, I also want to reward those of you who spend some time crafting a really great review that talks about what you're getting out of this podcast. So my team and I are going to select the highest quality review and get them a very special prize. They're going to receive a 3-package coaching session from me that is designed to help them launch their podcast or to evaluate an existing podcast and find ways to actually take it to that next level. They're going to receive that 3-session coaching package, which is valued at over $1,000, as well as the ATR 2100 microphone. If you have a microphone already as a podcaster, this is a great road microphone if you're ever traveling, or it's a great to always have a second one, or if you haven't started your podcast yet, this could really help you. This is the #1 mic I recommend for those just starting out. So to enter those contests, all you have to do is leave a review on either the audio or the video podcast, and actually if you leave a review on both of them, you're entered twice. So you can actually have 2 chances there instead of just 1. But for full contest details, please go to yourpodcastguru.com/contest. So again, thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and I look forward to hearing from you, hearing your feedback, and look forward to reading all those reviews. But more importantly, right now it's time for you to go out there to really take action and to find out how you can maximize both your impact and your income.